I want to go into something else. You mentioned, the hypocrisy when it comes to these satanic clubs, just, not talking about Islam. Let's talk about some very famous content creators on the internet and in the news who have been known for throwing punches at certain belief systems, but not throwing punches against others. A group of people that kind of made you very well known for critiquing the Young Turks. So background on me. So high school me, right when I was starting that Secular Student Alliance chapter, when I was in 10th grade and 11th grade, I was also actually heavily consuming the Young Turks. I loved seeing Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian going after Christian theocracy, making pro-atheism and separation of church and state videos. Cenk was even a Freedom from Religion Foundation awardee, just like me. So we had a lot of common ground. But around 2014 and 2015, more 2015, maybe 2015, 16, I started to notice a really weird issue with the Young Turks. It started when I was like really consuming content like Dave Rubin leaving the Young Turks and other people starting to point out TYT and their fallacies, like our friend Atheism is Unstoppable. They'll happily go after Christian theocracy all day, find any local issue and make a gigantic segment about it. But when it came to Sam Harris trying to critique Islam or any new atheist type figure, all of a sudden, just with the language that Cenk was using on the show, it all of a sudden became very defensive against the atheists. I was like, what? Wait a second, this is a little weird. And then they started to just push it more and more and more. Then Cenk had Sam Harris on for a debate on the Young Turks where he was going after him more and more and more and being continuously hostile. And it made me realize, wow, TYT has changed, or either it's changed or it's always been that way. But go into a little bit, Sean, what made you decide that it was very important for you as a content creator to critique the Young Turks and a lot of the things that they're stating to the public?
Well, I mean, for a long time, like when I got into political YouTube, I would watch and mostly listen to the Young Turks while I was in college because I loved it on in the background. Because when I got into YouTube in terms of a viewer, it was like 2009, and there was like 5 political channels. It was like How the World Works for the Conservatives, The Amazing Atheists, the Young Turks, Thunderfoot, and one other one that's eluding. Oh, Alex Jones, of all people. So I would listen to all of them because that was like all of the content, and like that was in that category for the most part. And so I started to realize that the Young Turks were like wrong back then, and I didn't know at that time when I was 19 that, like 6 years later, 7 years later, I would be making fun of them. But I just know a lot about their argumentation, and I would notice how they would shift depending on the topic, and like they could never follow a logical structure or anything like that. So I would, so like I had that in the back of my mind. And then I started making content, and I didn't expressly set out to, do response videos to them. And I do the first response video. It's the first video of mine that takes off. And I'm like, I'm not going to do the Young Turks over and over again. So I wait like months in order to do another response. That one also takes off. And I'm like, I'm not going to be like the Young Turks guy on the internet. And then after a while, I was like, what am I doing? Like a view's a view. And if they're going to put out issues that I want to talk about, like, why not structure my commentary as a response video to them so that most people will see it? So then, like, that's really how it started. But, as far as the Islam thing and all that, this is like where you run into problems with intersectionality, because for whatever reason, Islam is reviewed as like this religion of color. So like attacking Islamic values or Islamic societies happens to also be racist, basically, is how these people treat it. So like, and also Cenk is like a former Muslim, and so he has Muslim family and all that. So he gets very defensive on it. And he's also very like anti-white and anti-Christian. So like for him, it's like all in the same vein, even though it makes no sense. So like Cenk will get all these like awards from atheist organizations because they're like, oh, he stands up for secularism, but it's not what he's doing. He's opposed to Christianity rather than being opposed to religiosity.
Right.
And he's also opposed to Judaism, just watch some of his commentary related to them.
And that's what started to really irritate me. I thought the Young Turks for a while was this kind of counterculture, a source of real information, stuff that, CBS won't talk about, NBC, MSNBC won't talk about. Like they're getting into they critique Christianity. Wow, like this is really politically incorrect to do in 2012, 2013, 2014. That's awesome. And then you realize, wait, there's a reason why. Why aren't we seeing the same amount of Islamism videos,
Oh,
the same amount of anti-jihad videos?
there's a great example. It's the San Bernardino shooting, and these videos are still up online. There's
Right.
Jenk's initial reaction to it, where he's like screaming, and he has like a band-aid over his nose, like he broke his nose or something. I don't know what happened to
Mhm.
him. Maybe he fell down. I don't know. And he's like screaming into the camera. He's like, "Take the guns away! Take the guns away!" He's just screaming. He's like, "They're terrorists!" Like going super hard. And this is because originally, when they did that show, they didn't know the identity of the person behind the shooting. But
Right.
then they find out the next day, and Jenk's tone is totally shifted. It's completely different because he found out that that was an Islamic terror attack. So, like, you can see his reaction to the same exact information, only separated by a day, to the same exact circumstances, and it
Mhm.
completely changes based on whether or not the person is a white Christian, maybe Christian, but white conservative Christian. Cenk adds all these things in together
Right.
versus
Right.
an Islamic person. I mean, they covered the Pulse nightclub thing repeatedly over and over again as this like anti-gay thing, and how that was actually from American culture and all that. Turns out the guy, we find out a year, 2 years later, when his wife is on trial, he
Mhm.
just Googled nightclubs near me, and he was reportedly to have said when he was in there, where are all the women in this club? Like, he didn't know it was a gay club. And by the way, there's like a thing that I always want to bring up, because there was some gay guy who came out and said that he had an illicit affair with this person. And like, because they were going for the angle of like repressed homophobia. That
Mhm.
guy just totally made it up. He
Wow.
saw nearly 50 people get killed and thought this was a chance for his 15 minutes. Nobody talks about that guy. I think people need to bring that up. But anyway, yeah. So he did the story where he's like, oh, turns out it wasn't anti-gay thing, and then just dropped it, like
Mhm.
ignored what it was actually about or anything like that.